Alright, hey guys, what's up? Roshi is here. Today we're taking a look at an FPS shrine list. It seemed like a fantastic include for UXU, one of the new cards, and it actually ended up being pretty hilarious. We got quite a bit of spice out of UXU, and yeah, it was a good time. I just took my FPS shrine deck I had from an ECQ or some expedition event from a while ago, and it did pretty well there. And I just tweaked it a little bit to make it better with UXU. And then we played some games with it. I ended up winning like most of my games. I think we had like a 90% win rate, but that was only with, we only played like 7 or 8 games. So we won about 6 or 7 of them. And that's pretty good enough for me. And I had fun playing it, so I think it definitely has legs. It might not go as well, just depending on when you're playing or what matchups you get. But for me, I had a blast. And for what's going on here, Carver sacks, draws stuff. Nesting Raven. This is one of our ways to get multicolored units. It also is a cheap way to get Shrine turned on, so you could curve like Raven into Kato. Or even more hilarious, I suppose, would be Raven into Mother of Skies into, where is it at? Shrine to carve it. And then you could sack your Nesting Raven on turn 3. And that would equate to you having a 3/2 bird with, or a 3/1 bird with flying and lifesteal and charge. Basically, you have three X's with flying and lifesteal and charge. And you'll just bash your opponent in the head really hard with that. Or like Kato kind of will do the same thing, just a little less damage. So, pretty funny curve outs. Nesting Raven also blocks a lot of stuff pretty well. And the fact that it's 1 power and creates 2 bodies is pretty sweet. And so we have enough synergy with this card that we'll run it. Kato eventually becomes an 8/8, but most of the time he's just 2 bodies. And sometimes even 3 or 4 bodies for the price of 2 power. So, does a lot for our deck when we're looking to sacrifice things. And later on, it just straight up wins the game. Mother of Skies creates a lot of fodder. I know the basic Stone Scar version of this deck will play Rat Cage, but we basically have rats that fly. So, watch out for the flying gremlins. Blade Pass Smuggler is one of the best smugglers. It's an X4, so Seer and stuff isn't killing it, and it blocks Milos, and it blocks a lot of stuff very well. Being a 1/4 is where you want to be at, especially for a market. And it's actually one of the only merchants that still is a 1/4. The other one, the time one, got nerfed. For our market, we have Ranger's Choice. This basically reads kill... This kills Kilo, and it kills Roland, and there's some other stuff you can kill with it, but most of the time that's what you're doing with it. You can negate spells with it, so if you know your opponent's playing 8 of the Horu, you can just counter it, and that's hilarious. If they're on like some sort of spaghetti spell deck, just sit there and screw around until eventually you play Silverblade Menace and kill them. One of my favorite ways to do this, speaking of that, is we have Junkyard. So what we can do is, very late in the game, we can play our Junkyard, get back our Merchant, and then next turn use the Junkyard to pop their Aegis, play your Merchant, get your Silverblade Menace, and then just blast their face off with it. And if they don't have Transpose, they'll just die. And most of the time, they're not gonna like hold on to Transpose the whole game unless they like think you might be doing this. And sometimes it just comes out of left field. They're not expecting it, and you'll blow them out. Turn to Seed is for Roland, and other stuff. I mean, Turn to Seed hits everything. Junkyard, I went over Junkyard. And Edge, we don't always want Edge, but sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's like a 2 power 6/6 that just like filters a lot of stuff, so that can be pretty sweet. We can also get it back with Junkyard, which is cool. Speaking of Junkyard, since we're playing it, I added a few Oblivion Spikes. I had this in the original version too. I love this card. We create a lot of fodder. Sometimes there'll be some Shenra Speaks lists rolling around, and you'll just make a bunch of crap on the board, and they'll fire off a Shenra Speaks and be like, alright, whew, I can take a breather, and you're like, untap, hit you for 11. So, Spike earns its slot, and the fact that we can buy them back with Junkyard is hilarious. And even if all Spike is doing is just like killing their best minion and then dying, that's fine. Like, if we do that and then we buy it back and do it again, like, that's a 2-for-1. So, we take those, as I like to say. I trimmed back a bit on the Blight Moths. We're playing a bunch of Display of Menaces, and now that it's more expensive, I don't like having as many of them. They're just gumming up my hand. Maybe this is incorrect. Maybe I still just play 4 Blight Moth, but I opted to cut 2 Blight Moth to add a few 10 the flock, and that's why I did that. Strange Burglar will buff our whole team, and then it's multi-colored, so it makes flyers, and we can pay 2, exhaust it, sack a unit, draw 3, take 3 damage, which is sweet. And then, Strange Burglar is great. Wasteland Broker. I actually had a hilarious game where we drew UXU in our opening hand. So we used Smuggler to put UXU back into our market, and then I drew a Broker. So I had a pretty decent board at the time and assumed my opponent was going to kill it. So we brokered UXU and just ended up destroying them with the UXUs, which was hilarious. So keep that in mind that, you know, drawing UXU in your opening hand isn't always a detriment. You can always just smuggler it away and potentially broker it back into your deck. Or, just discard it or something. You don't have to do that, but if it comes up, it's something to keep in mind. Broker can also just be really good value. Against a spell-heavy deck, and you expect them to have Transpose, all you have to do is just Broker Menace and just cast it like 4 times, and, hopefully they run out of Aegis eventually. You could also Broker Junkyard, and that's just infinite value. And Brokering Edge isn't terrible either. So, plenty of decent Broker targets. It being like a pretty solid body as a 4/4 also adds to its value in our deck. Just being, like I said, a 4/4 that just comes down and holds down the fort, and also gives us some value from our market too. UXU, I'm not going to read this whole card, but long story short, in our deck, all of our crap's going to be dying. As it's dying, it's going to buff the crap out of UXU. You can get the stat buffs multiple times, but each ability you can only get once. Most of the time, you end up with some crazy combination of, like, killer and whatever, so oftentimes he gets beefy as hell and just kills something immediately, or maybe you ambush it in or something, and that's pretty hilarious. I definitely think it earns its slot as, like, an FPS Shrine top end. Before, we almost always had to win by, like, using Shrine and stuff, but now we can maybe, steal a game with just a big Aegis-y, killery UXU. Shrine, if you sack a unit, everything gets +2, charge and lifesteal. Combust, sack a unit, kill a unit, probably killing Rollins and stuff with this, or just whatever. We have a lot of tokens, so blow them away. Menace Chant, make sure that we hit all of our power drops. Definitely kind of a power-hungry deck that wants to curve out, and Chant helps a lot with that. In the late game, we can use it to basically get 2 cards for the price of 1. You'll lose a power for it, but you'll get a random card from the game, and then you'll get a sigil from your deck, and you could potentially use these for Edge of Uprising fodder, or whatever. And that's pretty cool. Devour, I'm only playing 2. Like I said, we're playing 4 Display of Menace, and the main thing we do with this card is sack a unit to draw 2 cards. And Devour just kind of also fulfills that role, so I still won a few Devours, but maybe not the full 4. 10 the Flock is really basic. Make 3 guys. I actually really like this card. Sometimes this deck would have trouble getting its feet under it, and 10 the Flock would let you just generate a lot of bodies for Shrine, a lot of sack bodies, so potentially could see myself playing more Flocks. And, but for now, only 2 Flocks will be given. Display of Menace actually has other modes on it. We can kill relics with it, and we can deal 1 damage to each enemy. This is also why I said earlier we're okay with playing less than the full set of Blight Moths, because sometimes people are playing a bunch of X1s, like us, and you just need to blow them away. Power base is pretty straightforward. We're playing the only Silexes we can. We get access to a good pile of vows and some seats. And between our vows and seats, our power should be fine most of the time. Sometimes it gets a little sketchy, but thanks to Menace Chant and just not too heavy influence requirements, we basically only need 2 of each to cast everything in our deck and mark it. So thanks to that, we're able to pretty handily cast everything on time, and that's pretty solid. That's where you want to be at. And yeah, that's the list. It's fun, and thanks for watching.